Good evening. I'm Marilyn Kushner, Curator of Prints, Photographs, and Architectural Collections at the New York Historical Society, joined by Renate Aller, the photographer of this exhibition. Before we begin tonight's discussion, I would like to thank our trustees, our Chairman's Council, and all of our members and other generous donors. Your support allows New York Historical to continue to pursue our mission. New York Historical Society is currently open on Wednesdays through Sundays, so please reserve your timed entry tickets on our website. I wanted to let you know that the program will last approximately 45 minutes, including 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end, which you can submit via the Q&A function on your Zoom screen at any point during the presentation. We've disabled the chat function, so please make sure to use the Q&A. After the presentation, we will get to as many questions as time allows. Renate Aller was born in Germany and lives and works in New York City. Her work is in the collections of corporate institutions, private collections, and museums, including the Lannan Foundation, Santa Fe, New Mexico, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., Yale University in Connecticut, George Eastman House, Rochester, New York, New Britain Museum of American Art, Connecticut, Hamburg Kunsthaus in Hamburg, Germany, the Chazen Museum of Art in Madison, Wisconsin, the Musée des Beaux-Arts in La Loche, Switzerland, and the Parrish Art Museum in Watermill, New York. It's quite a long list. And the New York Historical Society Museum, where the project Sidewalk, 6 feet apart, will be exhibited, is being exhibited now. And by the way, we have extended the run of the exhibition, which was supposed to close July 10th, and it will now close on August 7th. So you have extra time to come and see us. Okay, Renate. I wanted to start by asking you, how did this idea germinate?
Well, actually, this was not really meant to be an art project or a book or a museum show. But I think it was just, I was just inviting a friend after, being isolated for a few weeks to see me. And I called and said, let's meet on our sidewalk outside and I'll bring disinfected chairs. And
Which are in the exhibition now, right?
Yes, chairs were there, and at the opening we were reenacting some of the photos, and also visitors and collaborators alike. It was really lovely. I will also announce certain days when I'll be at the museum, so people can come if they want to sit with me and visit. But we'll find some good dates and publish those either on Instagram or something. But yeah, I guess if you're an artist, whatever you do ends up being an artwork. I mean, when my husband asked me to marry him, he said, can we please not make this into a performance or artwork? Which I agreed, but if he hadn't asked me, this was definitely going to be a mixture between a regular marriage and a performance piece, which probably would end up being some form of artwork. So yes, I guess that's my background is really music, composing, performing, etc., and site-specific works.
Well, a large part of your also are these gorgeous landscapes. And I keep meaning to ask you, where are you standing when you look like you're on tops of mountains, photographing the whole landscape, the whole icy landscape, or in the middle of a desert? This is very different from what you've done at certain times. The performance idea, I think, ties into some of your earlier work. But right now you do those gorgeous landscapes. Can you at all connect the two between, your Sidewalk series and the landscapes?
Yeah, I'm quite known for, well, you see them behind me, one of them, oceanscapes, which I photographed over the period of probably 23 years or longer, probably 23, 24 years from the same location. So it's the repetition that is actually something that I'm interested in. And you see that also in this project. I only realized it, I think, when I saw the photos afterwards, that the chairs are always 6 feet apart. And the location is usually the same, apart from sometimes when I actually went to visit somebody because they couldn't come, like in this first slide, Alex couldn't come to see me, so I went to see him. And that is sort of one connection. And I think also that I was trying to create memories for us, because we needed memories of a time that we had never experienced before. And I guess I believe that you create memories through repetition. Like, you don't have a memory of something that hasn't happened before, then it's not a memory. It's so I think it's got, it could be in your head. Obviously, you can have a repeated vision in your head. That's also a form of a memory. But I think that's, yeah. So coming back to the relationship to landscapes, in general, I think that the way we connect our relationships, is to connect with our surroundings. So basically, when I go and photograph landscapes, I look at them as portraits, and I abstract them to a point that I take them out of the scale. Like, you want to really know what the size of, let's say, the mountain is. And by taking it out of the scale, you get the viewer is trying to connect, because we always need to understand where we are in relationship to our surroundings and the scale. That's something we assess all the time. People who can't see, they do it with their ears, or, you always need that feedback of how far am I away from this and that point to find your bearings. And so I'm trying to get people to understand where they are and the abstraction that they experience, because it makes them actually engage with the image more. So at the same time, when we were in the pandemic, I mean, I'm just sort of saying that now as a reflection, because when I was acting, I didn't think this all through, I just did it. But I think that we needed to know where we were, because we were lost in our emotional landscape and the political at the time, as well as everything. We just couldn't find our bearings. And I think to sit on a sidewalk with somebody, this connection to place and to another person without moving really very much, helps you to anchor and to, be somehow present.
And I understand how this is going to relate to all of us who went through COVID. But what do you think, because I am a historian as well as a photography curator, and curative works on paper, but history comes into this. So what do you think that people are going to get from this 50 years from now who didn't experience COVID? What will they come away with, do you think, or what do you want them to come away with? We
have been fascinated looking at images from the previous pandemic. And, if you look at images, if they're black and white, obviously, it suggests always it's the past tense. That's how we read images usually. And color images connect more to the present. But I have a feeling that first, this was something that the entire world experienced. So it was really a shared international experience. And, so I think that it's a very important document, just because also there was no sensation there. I did take photos first as a reaction of the field hospital, and it was sort of like inhaling and exhaling, you know, and I couldn't use them because I thought I was intruding into people's lives who were in that hospital. And I didn't think I had the right to do that. And I didn't want to take pictures of doctors who came out of shifts. I'd looked in their eyes, but I didn't really want to take their picture. I didn't think that was right. That's just me, the way so what I did was I was thinking back about the images I took just after 9/11, because I lived downtown in Tribeca, literally in spitting distance from where it all happened. And my first reaction then was to reach out to the community, because there was no social worker going around and people were not really victims. I mean, they were alive, the ones that I visited, but they were very traumatized. And, you know, at that time, obviously we were going inside, we were feeling safe inside. Now we feel safer outside, which is sort of different. But I think that it's very important always to document the regular things of history. I have a handwritten diary, and I look back at 2020 because every day I write my little 2 sentences. I look back what I've done 2020, and just little things, you know, had a food delivery, left it outside to quarantine, you know, little things to me are documents. And these photos also now, seeing them in the exhibition in a bigger scale, because, you know, I printed them myself, so I've obviously seen them in that scale, but they were in a box for, you know, nearly a year. And I was very touched myself, because I remembered each moment, every conversation that I had. Like this person that we're seeing right now, Jill Weinstein, she's a very dear friend, and she is a mother and an educator and an artist. And she was showing me some artwork she was doing. She see it on her lap. And I didn't touch her, you know, she was sort of holding it up, showing it to me. But she was my hero in that time, because she had children, and upstairs her friends were doctors, and 2 doctors on the front line, and their children, they were worried about their children. So she took in their children too, while she was working full time, and had her own, and she cooked for everybody, and she cooked for the doctors and put it outside their door at night. I mean, that woman's amazing. She's my hero. And I said to her, put on something nice, because we were all indoors and, you know, whatever, wearing our sweatshirts. And I always said, just put on something nice, something that you feel like you're celebrating a moment.
That's a wonderful story about that image. I also want to bring up to our audience that these images are alternating with poetry, which is also very much a part of your presentation. Do you want to explain about the poetry that they're seeing as we're talking and looking at the images?
Yes, actually in the exhibition you can see that as well, because we've decided in the book the poetry is a bit more like in our presentation. There's an image, and then there is a piece of the poem, and then there's an image again. Sometimes there's actually a blank page, but in the exhibition, of course, is a different space. So we decided to still, because the rhythm of a poem is the most important part of a poem, I believe. And so that was really exciting, because, you know, with your team, design team, we were figuring out, you know, over months that, you know, I was sort of making little models, but in real life, really, we had to keep moving things, so that, because the space is in between the poem, you know, an inhale and exhale, and then there's something, but they all relate to to the images, but not necessarily, they're not the titles of the images. It's an independent poem that runs through it.
Yeah, I'm looking at you speaking, and I'm looking at you in the images, and you're wearing the same clothes. Do you want to talk about how, why you wore those clothes and why you wore the same thing all the time?
Well, the first time I took a picture, I wasn't even going to take a photo. I was just going to, well, I was just going to meet. And then when I chose to take the camera across the street, I had to obviously choose something, you know, as one does, get dressed. And I thought, I'll just wear, oh, it was actually a bit cold that day. And I thought, if I wear something that's really, this is my Nicholas K dress. It's like a coat, but it's a dress. And I was able to wear thermal underwear underneath. So that's why I chose it in the first place. But then I decided that it would be very strange if I'd wear a different outfit every time. Then it'd be all about my wardrobe. And I wanted to be the constant. And I think a black dress, especially one like this, which sort of changes, the reading of the body language changes a lot because of the way this dress happens to be coincidentally designed, you know. So that way it's a very strong image, because you see the angles, for example, like if you see it in the pictures, but like if I put my leg up here, you know, you can see it's creating an angle which you can't really create with when you wear your jeans every time. That's the, you know, a tent kind of dress changes a lot the angle. And I think the way we read, that's a classic picture to read angles. The way you can read images, we read from left to right in the Western society. And I would I should tell you how I choreographed this, because that's part of the answer. Everybody I asked would have a different posture that I feel that they're comfortable in. And it's different for everybody. And then once I found the posture that I found was working with them, I would say, why don't you stay more or less like that? And then I would, because I had to go across the street every nine shots, I would look through the camera, and then I would adjust my posture to react to theirs. So basically that's how, because when you sort of, how do you call this, blink with your eyes, what's it called, when you squeeze them, you can see that it's all kind of lines, and that's our connection, because we couldn't really connect physically. So I needed to make an abstract connection, and that I created that with the lines. So each image, I think, somehow has it in a different way.
That brings up two things that I've been thinking of, which I think are fascinating. And one of them is that one needs to read a photograph the way one reads a book. One needs to read images the way they read words. And if you do that, you constantly see new things in a photograph, as I do when I'm looking at all of your photographs. Every time I look at them, I see something different in terms of shapes or relationships. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is that you did a lot of performance art early in your career. And how do you connect that performance art with what this is? Because this is really about relationships. It's about, I think, a pull and a tug of trying to get together in certain ways, but not being able to. So how do you see this as part of a continuum of your earlier performance art?
Yes, well, actually, first I have to say in general, to performance art, and this is also applying to this project, like you don't really know what is the artwork, what's the moment, or actually what's the concept, the intention, is that the artwork? Because that's, you know, one way of looking at it. or the actual life moment when we were together, or the documentation of it in book form or exhibition, or, you know, what is the actual real artwork? I don't think we have an opinion on that, like, right? I mean, and traditionally it would be the piece in the frame in the end. That, but then again, because it's a series, if I would exhibit this somewhere else, I would probably react to the room and it would be different, the way it's hung. Now, to the performance character, what I just remember what Simon at the opening, he said, when we talked about this space, the gallery space, and he was saying, because one of my quotes is that we're in a transitional world, and he said, it's a transitional space and it's perfect for the project. Simon von Boyd said that. And I thought that was very important that he said that, because it's like a hallway in a way. It's a transitional space. It's a space that you move in, and you might stay, and a lot of people actually do stay, but it's a transitional space. And he thought it couldn't have been a better space for the project. So that's one thing. Now, the connection to my past is, yes, I've actually, I started off mainly with performance art, and whatever comes with that, you know, projections, and sometimes with a projection of a performance, or photography, large photography in a public space. And then I would do a performance for the opening that would be filmed, and then I would cut that overnight, all night I would be editing. And then the next day for the public opening in a screening room, like right next to it, would be the performance edited, you know, with sound and everything, which obviously had to be done overnight. So that's what I did a lot. So yes, it does. I don't think I thought of it as performance art. I just thought to invite people, and then I recorded it, because I mean, my children always say, if mommy doesn't take a picture, then it didn't happen. So I guess I have a bit of a habit of documenting everything all the time.
But in a sense, it's performance, because you are reacting. When you had these sessions with the people that you knew, you were reacting to things that they were saying and doing, and so in that way, it's not a planned performance, but it's almost like a happening. It's almost like we are watching this happen.
Yeah.
Did anything happen that really surprised you, that you didn't expect to happen?
Oh yeah, this coincidentally, can you play the video, please? There's a little bar below, and you can. Or is it playing by itself, maybe? It's not a still, it's actually a video that we're seeing. And it should start. It's quite important that, yeah, there you go. There it starts. So what happened with this one was, I took the sound off this when I prepared. I arrived at our friend Dan's home, and he hadn't seen anybody. They hadn't been out at all. And we were very close. So we really wanted to hug, but obviously we couldn't. And he had, as a surprise, written a song for me and played it. And it's the cover of the book, that this is me with him. Once I went.
Wait, can you open it from front to back?
What happened is,
Can you open that from front to back so that you can see the whole thing?
Yeah.
Can you show the page? Because it's him, right. There
Him
you are.
and me.
You're reacting to what he played.
Well, but I'm literally reacting because I'm crying, and that's why I have my head like this, because I'm actually hiding behind my hair, because I was crying, because I couldn't touch him, but he was physically touching me with his music, because music actually has that ability to physically touch you, but I couldn't touch him back. So I was crying.
that's a very poignant thing, but I think our feeling, and you caught it in an image. And again, if we can learn how to read images that way, you are shying away and you are hiding from something. And the question is, if you didn't know that he had made that music for you or composed that music for you, you would know that he was touching you in some way, but you didn't know why. But it's all part of learning how to read photographs. How did this project affect you?
I think it was while I was doing it, it was basically the best thing that could have happened to me, because I was socializing, which we wouldn't have done. I mean, I had there's the video now, which actually has a sound, but that the sound is not on, because I'm actually directing her to move a bit, because I had to frame her, because I wanted to make sure that she wasn't out of the frame. Yeah, it's a shame that there's no sound there, but it affected me, and of course my husband came down as often as he could. He was working, so he couldn't always, but because that was our social life, because at that time we were not even meeting people on our roof. We were walking in the street and seeing neighbors from across the street, and obviously very few people, because most people left town. Now this one has a sound as well. I think we should probably try, and would be very nice if you could, it will start in a second. That was our neighbor, who's 87-year-old, and he hadn't been out at all. He didn't even want me to take his picture outside, and then last second, oh, what a shame we don't have the sound. It's the most beautiful sound, because he's yeah, well, okay, no
I think
sound.
we can get a feeling of it. At least I do, from just looking at
it's just he's like one of the famous 80s musicians from New York. And so he came outside, and because I just said, why don't you come outside? He didn't want to come outside. He hadn't been outside at all, like for weeks and weeks, and his wife. So last second, I just said, just bring your chair, come outside. And he did. And I said, bring your violin. And he did. And when he was finished, it was all silent. The people from the windows and the roof, obviously neighbors, would be clapping. And afterwards, he was standing and holding court in the street, and then people came up to him, I mean, with a distance, obviously. But so it was quite a beautiful moment as well. And for him, I think very special, because he just realized that all his neighbors loved him so much. They recognized him by his music, and all came to the window and onto the roof when he played.
Well, that gets to one of the questions I was going to ask you, was how did people react when they, there might have been a few people walking to the grocery store, when we had to go outside for something, but how did people on the sidewalk who passed you react? Did they watch you, or did they, Well,
at first, there were very few people, which was very good, because no cars, because my camera was on the other side of the street. Otherwise, because I didn't control exactly when the camera would take the picture, that was, on automatic setting. So that way, I would have had them in the picture then, and because nobody was there, it was very rare. I have to say, however, one of the people who were in the project, he was in there earlier, was Jakob El-Hanani. He lives in the neighborhood, and he kept walking by, and then one day he stopped, and I said, Jakob, do you want to be in this project? And he was very happy, very excited. And he told me his whole life story while he was sitting there. So this picture here, it just shows my studio when Marilyn, you came to visit actually around that time.
Right.
I had actually painted boards in the scale of the walls, and then I cut out little prints, and then every time I walked by, I would move them, because, like a puzzle, I would move them to get the right rhythm, the way it felt right. first I laid them out like in the book, but obviously I think as an artist, you always have to change and adapt to another space, whether it's a book or, you know, internet or whatever.
Well, that's the way curators put together exhibitions too. But I want to get to a few questions. Somebody said, I'm curious why sidewalk is 2 words instead of a noun, sidewalk.
Well, my computer keeps self-correcting it, and it stopped about a year ago because my computer must have learned that that is the way I want to write it. I still get people to write it in one, and when if I have a write-up, like, you know, I think the New York Times, James, I think, wrote it also in 1 word. It's fine, but the sidewalk, as we know, is a noun. That's where we met. And I, on purpose, wrote it as 2 verbs because it's really, we were moving sort of side by side away from each other. It was a walk to the side, a step to the side away from each other. And so it was really suggesting the action of this, of what we were doing, yes.
So you made it a verb instead of a noun.
Oh yeah, it doesn't exist, of course.
Right.
I don't think there's such thing as walking.
Right.
But I wanted you also people to stop and think, oh, well, you know, because you stop when you see something that's written incorrectly and wonder then why. And that's why it's also meant to be written in not capital, but in small letters at the book cover. I insisted that it be not in capital letters so that it's really clear that it's not the sidewalk, but an action.
Another question is, how many people did you photograph over how many days? And
Now,
you said you started in April. We went into lockdown in March, so you started in April?
Yes. We went into lockdown about 14th of March, somewhere in the middle, and I think after about 2 weeks, that's when we started feeling that I wanted to reach out to people 2-3 weeks later. But what did you ask?
How many people did you photograph?
I stopped at 32 people. I think they're 32, right? Yeah, should be 32. Because I thought each one was meant to represent a day in a month, because a month is usually sort of 30 days or something like that. And obviously I couldn't photograph every day, and that's why it took a bit longer, because either people canceled quite a bit because they were hesitant, and then they would call and reconfirm, and then it would be raining, and so we couldn't do it. So it had to be the right time of the day, because if you have too much sun on you, it's you know, there's a limit to photography, how much sun you want on people. So yeah, it was meant to represent a month, because, you know, we all thought, of course, initially that'd be a month or 2. And I just stopped at some point. The last image was James Hall. And then I didn't take any more pictures. I was going to carry on actually with the project. I was going to, there you see the video, the reenacting from the actual image. I was going to carry on by having people, I was going to put one of my work tables on the sidewalk and then make a stew, and then everybody brings their own utensils and we sit 6 feet apart, you know, 2 couples maybe, or whichever, and with the candles, and have dinner. And that was my next project, just like how to see people. But then just as I was planning it, I went outside to sort of look at the sidewalk, and, you know, I should put it in front of the elevator. I thought not to be right in the middle of the sidewalk. And I looked across the street and there was this homeless person, and I thought, this is the most inappropriate thing to do, is to have a feast, you know, with candles. And I just thought, I can't do that. And that's when I started having friends up on the roof for dinner. They came up the back stairs, so they didn't have to go inside. And because nobody's using the back stairs, and obviously people happened to live close by because they couldn't use my bathroom in the beginning. And you know, after a while, I would let people use also my bathroom, and then, you know, that's how it developed. I took pictures of that as well, but that was yeah, for memories.
Okay, one final comment, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. I love this comment because I hadn't thought of it before, but it really is so appropriate. I like the idea of the sidewalk as a landscape. And that question came in when I think when I was referring to your landscapes, but indeed the sidewalk did become a landscape for you.
Yes, and it's the horizontal line. Of course, that does that again, as you see with the seascapes. And somehow when I do room immersive experiences, room immersive room experiences, they usually are, there's a horizon line going all the way around, which is embracing the viewer.
All right, one final question. I have so many questions here to ask you, but if you could change anything about the project and the way you did it, would you change it, or would you add something? Would you take something away?
I probably would have continued. Well, it was hard to continue because we had the looting. We had the looting, of course, at the time in May. So like we couldn't, it was hard to continue, but I think I would have probably somehow found a way to continue, because there were more friends of mine who were living in Soho, artists who I'm very, very close to, who I would have liked to have part of this project, and other friends. But I just, I think I stopped because it was just also very exhausting for us, because we had every night the lootings, and it was a little bit scary because you didn't know whether you kind of get somebody throw a firebomb, or, you know, it was not that comfortable anymore to be in the streets.
Okay, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot today, things I didn't know, and it's been great to talk to you. We have unfortunately run out of time for this, but thank you so much for your participation and for your exceptional support of the Historical Society. There will be another Curator Confidential in 2 weeks on the current exhibition Monuments, Commemoration, and Controversy. So please be on the lookout for an invitation. We also hope that you come to see Sidewalk in the near future. Thank you all so much.
If you have any questions, you can always DM me on Instagram and I can answer any of the questions.
Great. Great way to finish.
Always lovely talking.
You might be inundated.